There is a community on the big island of Hawaii called Leilani Estates. In May 2018, 24 fissures opened in the ground beneath their neighborhood. Lava poured into streets. It buried houses. It cut the roads that connected them to the rest of the island. Route 130 cracked when lava flowed under it. Route 132 was overrun. Route 137 was buried. A man had to be guided out of his own property, through a back door and through the forest, because his driveway was already covered. When it was over, more than 700 homes were destroyed. Entire communities, Kapoho vacation land, Kapoho beach lots, ceased to exist. 30 miles of public roadway disappeared under lava. 7 years later, in January 2025, Hawaii County finally began reconstruction of a 3.6-mile stretch of Highway 137. It is expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2026. The people of Leilani Estates who stayed, who rebuilt, who came back, live today at the end of the same road network that failed them in 2018. Route 130 is their primary evacuation route. The route that cracked under lava. The route that became impassable. The route that is right now the only paved way out if the East Rift Zone activates again. This week, the volcano above them is about to erupt for the 48th time since December 2024. And here is where the data gets genuinely alarming. The 48th episode of Kīlauea's current eruption cycle will tie an exact historical record. The last time this volcano produced 48 consecutive high lava fountaining episodes was during the Pu'u'o'o eruption of 1983 to 1986. And after episode 48 of that sequence, the system changed. New fissures opened, a new vent took over, the eruption migrated downrift, and 32 years later, that downrift migration became the 2018 eruption that buried Leilani Estates. The USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory is forecasting episode 48 between May 23rd and May 25th. 3 days from now. The people in Lower Puna know this, and they are watching. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe to Global Faultline so you don't miss updates as this develops. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and tell me this. The same volcano that destroyed 700 homes in 2018 is about to reach the exact episode count that preceded the structural change that eventually caused that destruction. The families who rebuilt in Leilani Estates are still there. Route 130 is still their only way out. Does the monitoring system protecting them feel adequate? Drop that in the comments. Let's get into it. Kīlauea is not erupting in a vacuum. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory monitors 4 volcanic systems simultaneously on the Big Island alone: Kīlauea, Mauna Loa, Hualali, and the submarine volcano Lo'ihi. The same scientists, the same instrumentation budget, the same staffing levels, and right now they are tracking a Kīlauea summit eruption that has produced 47 episodes in 18 months, while simultaneously watching the East Rift Zone and the Southwest Rift Zone for any sign of the behavior that would signal the most dangerous possible transition. Here is why that split attention matters. In 2018, the warning time between the first detected ground deformation at Leilani Estates and the first lava reaching the surface was approximately 2 days. Within those 2 days, mandatory evacuations were issued, residents scrambled, and a man was guided out through a forest because his driveway was already gone. That is the operational timeline the HVO works with when a rift zone intrusion begins. 2 days. In a community where the roads failed in 2018. In a community where reconstruction of those roads began in January 2025 and is not yet complete. Right now, simultaneously, Mauna Loa, the world's largest active volcano, which erupted in November 2022 and sent lava flows toward Hilo, requires continuous monitoring of its own extensive sensor network. The southwest rift zone of Kīlauea, which has never produced a major eruption in the modern monitoring era, but carries the same structural potential as the east rift zone, requires continuous assessment. And the summit eruption itself, now approaching its 48th episode, is demanding the interpretive capacity of scientists who are trying to answer a question that has no historical precedent in the modern monitoring record. Has any episodic summit eruption of this duration and consistency ever transitioned to rift zone activity in real time? What does the tiltmeter data look like in the hours before that transition begins? The honest answer is, we don't have enough examples to know. The HVO is doing the most rigorous monitoring in the history of Hawaiian volcanology with exactly the resources it has. Those resources are split across a volcanic system that is simultaneously producing 47 documented episodes and approaching the threshold where the historical record says things changed. Nobody is coming with additional capacity. The monitoring network is what it is. Since December 23, 2024, Kīlauea has been running the same cycle 47 times. Magma enters the shallow summit reservoir from below. The ground inflates. The tiltmeter at Uekahuna records that inflation to sub-milliradian precision. When the pressure crosses a threshold, the magma forces its way to the surface. Lava fountains erupt from the north and south vents in Ha'lema'uma'u crater. The reservoir empties, the ground deflates, and within days, refilling begins again. Think of it like a bathtub with a slow drain and a running tap. The tap fills it. When it overflows, the eruption happens. It drains. The tap keeps running. 47 times that bathtub has filled and overflowed in exactly the same place, through exactly the same drain, at roughly the same rate. Since episode 47 ended on May 15th at 12:27 in the morning, the Uekahuna tiltmeter has recorded 10.8 microradians of inflationary tilt. Episode 47 consumed 15.6 microradians of deflationary tilt during its 9 hours of lava fountaining. The models built on 47 iterations of this cycle validated 47 times against actual eruption onset. Forecast episode 48 between May 23rd and May 25th. That is one of the most precise eruption forecasting capabilities in the history of volcanology. The HVO knows when the bathtub will overflow. They can tell you within a 3-day window. What they cannot tell you is whether episode 48 will overflow through the same drain. Here is the critical limitation. The tiltmeter measures summit reservoir pressure. It does not measure the stress state of the East Rift Zone conduit. It does not tell you whether 47 consecutive fill and drain cycles have altered the path of least resistance through the volcanic plumbing system. It does not tell you whether the next time magma seeks the surface, it will find the summit vents, or whether it will find a new pathway downrift. In 2018, the transition from summit activity to rift zone eruption was preceded by the collapse of the Pu'u'o'o cone on April 30th. That collapse was detectable. It provided approximately 2 days of warning before the first Leilani Estates fissures opened. 2 days. For the current summit eruption, the analog to that collapse event, the signal that would indicate the system is rerouting, is not clearly defined. Scientists are watching for it. The instruments are running. But the instrument network was not designed around this specific question, because this specific question, what does the pre-transition signal look like for an episodic summit eruption of this duration, has never been answered in the modern monitoring record. The Pu'u'o'o eruption began on January 3, 1983, on Kīlauea's East Rift Zone. For 3.5 years, it produced episodic high lava fountaining. Episodes 4 through 47 averaged 12.9 hours in duration, separated by pauses averaging 26.5 days. Lava fountains reached as high as 510 meters. The Pu'u'o'o cone built itself into one of the most recognizable volcanic features on the Big Island. Then came episode 48. It began in July 1986, and then new fissures opened at the base of the cone. A third fissure opened 3 kilometers downrift on July 18th. That fissure evolved into a vent called Kupi'anaha. The episodic fountaining era ended. The eruption transitioned to near-continuous effusion, and Kupi'anaha fed lava flows that traveled downslope for the next 5 years. The Pu'u'o'o eruption that began in 1983 continued through multiple vent transitions and behavioral changes until 2018. When it ended in Lower Puna, in Leilani Estates, in the community that today is still rebuilding its roads. The current Kīlauea eruption started at the summit on December 23, 2024. It is structurally different from Pu'u'o'o. Different location, different vent geometry, different confining caldera. The USGS is explicit that a direct one-to-one comparison carries significant uncertainty, but the number 48 is not arbitrary. It is the documented inflection point in the only historical analog that comes close to matching the current eruption's episode count and fountaining style. And the inflection in 1986 was not a larger version of what had come before. It was a reorganization, a new pathway, a change in behavior that nobody predicted in the hours before the new fissures opened. The echo of 1986 is not a prediction of what happens after episode 48. It is the documented data point that explains why the HVO scientists watching the tiltmeter this week are doing so with a specific kind of attention they have not applied to episodes 30, 35, or 40, because they know what 48 meant the last time. Here is the factor sitting behind episode 48 that is not in the aviation advisories, not in the park closure notices, and not in standard news coverage of the current eruption. The East Rift Zone is quiet. The USGS daily update says it clearly. No significant activity noted along Kilauea's East Rift Zone or Southwest Rift Zone. That sentence is monitoring confirmation, not a guarantee. There is a precise difference. What the instruments show is that the East Rift Zone is not currently exhibiting the seismic swarms, the ground deformation, or the elevated sulfur dioxide emissions that would indicate active magma intrusion into the rift conduit. The network is running, the data is clean, the rift zone is quiet. What the instruments cannot show is the cumulative effect of 47 fill and drain cycles on the stress state of the conduit system connecting the summit reservoir to the East Rift Zone. Every time the summit reservoir fills, pressure is transmitted through the volcanic plumbing system. Every time it drains through a summit eruption, that pressure dissipates locally. But the conduit to the rift zone is not isolated from those pressure cycles. It responds to them. At what level of cumulative loading that conduit becomes the path of least resistance? The answer to that question requires understanding the current mechanical state of a rock system 2 to 5 kilometers below the surface. The instruments cannot measure that directly. They can only detect the consequences after the transition begins. In 2018, the HVO had 2 days. The evacuation orders went out. Most people got out. One man needed to be guided through a forest. 30 miles of road disappeared. The families who rebuilt in Leilani Estates are gambling, not recklessly, not ignorantly, but deliberately. That the monitoring system will provide those 2 days again if the rift zone activates, that Route 130 will hold long enough to matter, that the HVO will see the signal in time. Those are reasonable assumptions based on the 2018 experience. They are not guarantees. The 2018 transition provided approximately 2 days of warning. A future transition could provide more. It could also provide less, depending on where magma enters the rift system and how quickly it propagates to the surface. That uncertainty, 2 days, maybe more, maybe less, no instrument currently capable of narrowing the window further, is what the families of Lower Puna are living with, while episode 48 inflates toward its threshold. This is global fault line. Kīlauea has been erupting episodically since December 23, 2024. 47 episodes, all confined to the summit caldera inside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. No lava flows threatening residential communities. The tilt meter at Huna has recorded 10.8 microradians of inflationary tilt since episode 47 ended on May 15th. The HVO forecasts episode 48 between May 23rd and May 25th. Episode 48 will tie the historical episode count of the Pu'u'o'o eruption's episodic fountaining phase, the phase that ended not with a larger eruption of the same type, but with a structural reorganization that opened new fissures downrift. That reorganization eventually produced the 2018 Lower Puna eruption. More than 700 homes, 30 miles of road, entire communities that no longer exist. Reconstruction of Highway 137 that began in January 2025 and is not yet complete. The East Rift Zone is currently quiet. The HVO instruments confirm it. The daily updates are clear. And in Leilani Estates, families are living at the end of Route 130, the road that cracked when lava flowed under it in 2018, waiting for an eruption cycle that is about to reach the exact episode count that preceded the last major behavioral change in this volcanic system. We are not watching a volcano that is going to erupt. We are watching a volcano that is about to erupt for the 48th time, approaching a historically documented inflection point, monitored by instruments that can tell you when the next summit episode begins, but cannot tell you whether it is the last episode before the system reorganizes into something the summit sensors were not designed to catch first. The tilt meter is filling, the window is 3 days. And in Lower Puna, the ground that was buried in 2018 is still under the lava. The road that cracked is still the only way out. And the families that came back are watching the same instruments the scientists are watching, hoping the signal comes early enough and the road holds long enough for it to matter. This analysis is based on USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory daily updates through May 20th, 2026, publicly available through official USGS Kīlauea volcano updates. All tiltmeter readings, episode dates, and forecast windows are sourced directly from HVO official communications. Historical 2018 eruption data, sourced from USGS, Hawaii County Recovery Site, and FHWA documentation. This does not represent a prediction of future volcanic activity. If you are watching from the Big Island, from Lower Puna, from Leilani Estates, from Paeoea, from anywhere in the East Rift Zone corridor, drop a comment. Tell me what May feels like down there this week. And tell me this, episode 48 is coming in 3 days. The historical record says this is the number where things changed last time. The instruments say the rift zone is quiet. The families in Lower Puna are still on Route 130. Is that enough information to feel safe? Drop that in the comments. I read everyone.